Hello and good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Matthew Crabb. I'm the CEO of QA Financial. We're an information business and events research and news platform that focuses on the topic of software quality assurance and more broadly software risk management at financial firms. And today we're hosting this online seminar with Applitools and with Tim Hines, who is tech product marketing leader at Applitools, and he's joining us today from Boston, and he'll be introducing himself in a moment. Just to let you know, the webinar will last about 35-40 minutes. The recording will then be on our website if you want to watch it again. In the resources section of the platform, so that's the button to the bottom right of your screen, we've got some white papers and other information from Applitools that you will find interesting and useful. And there'll also be some QR codes that Tim will share towards the end of this. So if you're watching the recording, you can access that content that way. First of all, before I hand over to Tim, for those of you who know the Applitools name but aren't really very familiar with what the company does, well, it's one of the leading testing services providers, and specifically we're talking about AI-powered end-to-end testing, a platform that enables teams of any skill level to create, execute, and maintain tests that validate more of their apps across more screens and devices in less time. So accelerating automation with AI-powered testing. And in the case of this webinar, specifically visual testing, and Tim will go into detail about how that works and using some case studies from the financial services industry, banks that Applitools has been working with. He'll show you how that works. I'm going to hand over to Tim, who's going to talk, as I say, about visual testing, autonomous visual testing, and how that replicates the human eye in verifying websites. Tim, perhaps you could start by talking a little bit about your role at Applitools and fill in any gaps that I might have missed that you think are important about the company that our audience should know about.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I've been in testing, development, and operations tools for about 14 years now. I've even had a 5-year stint where I was running my own startup, developing the tool, running all the testing, creating the automated test scripts, doing manual testing. So we've got quite a lot of experience with this, and recently have launched a few different versions of products at Applitools. So I'll be going through one of our products today called Autonomous, which is an AI end-to-end testing platform for websites and web apps and mobile web apps. So I'm going to jump right in and start with some of the challenges that we're seeing teams facing today around automated testing with newer interfaces, and primarily what's going on with financial apps with our customers. So we're seeing a huge volume of interfaces, states, scenarios that you have to verify. This is increasing exponentially. You're getting more browsers, more devices that need to be tested. People are using various screen sizes. It's no longer the situation where 90% of your users are accessing things through a browser and sometimes accessing it through a phone. It's more like 50-50. The velocity of code changes are coming very, very quickly now. And within the past 2 years, you've got these AI coding copilots that are jumping in and producing code even faster. And there have been a number of studies that have come out recently that some show that those actually increase bug rates. Some show that they decrease bug rates. So checking the source on it, if it comes directly from GitHub or if it comes from a third party who can actually validate that, you might want to see how that's affecting things. but it definitely is increasing the velocity of changes that are coming through the applications. So testers need a way to keep up with that. UI, obviously, much more complex than it was a few years back. You've got a lot of different technologies that are being used today, newer technologies that haven't really been tested before, and your testing tools need to be able to keep up with that. Environments, obviously, I mentioned browsers, devices, screen sizes, and then resources. Definitely within the past 2 years, there have been a number of layoffs in the tech industry, and everybody's being asked to do more with less. So tooling can help out in those situations to sort of spread out the ability to create test and maintain test. Now, specifically with the financial teams that we see, some of the challenges are data-rich scenarios. Obviously, you're going to have a lot of data that's on the application itself, from account balances, account numbers, just pure number of accounts that show up on page. So that's going to produce dynamic content shifts on the page. So when you're doing visual testing or validating things with a traditional testing tool, you may be missing parts of it, or it may shift content on page. It may break selectors that you had previously used. You've typically got some sort of localization, so changing the text from one language to another can also cause those shifts that'll break things. Compliance issues, obviously heavily regulated industries, so things like accessibility testing is going to be a big issue, and there's the European Accessibility Act that's coming through in 2025. So you've got to start making that mandatory as part of your end-to-end testing. And obviously multiple screens. Sometimes you're using the same application across those multiple screens. So being able to test on different screen sizes, different browsers, different versions of browsers, all really important. Personalization, obviously things like having the customer's name pop up, or sending out different promotions to them, A/B testing different promotions. All of these things are things that your marketing team may be doing within the application. And then PDF generation. It's one of the industries where PDFs get created regularly, and being able to test PDFs is something that most tools aren't able to do. We're able to do it at Applitools with our visual AI. So that's some of the big challenges there, but some things that you may be experiencing with traditional testing tools like Selenium, Tricentis, Cypress, you're going to have sort of poor test coverage just purely by the gap between the complexity of scenarios, velocity of code, and then the ability to keep up with that. So the traditional testing tools that are built out for test automation scale pretty linearly. So that causes poor test coverage, delays every release, and then expensive QA costs, because you need developers, or you need someone with coding skills to be able to write a lot of that test automation. So what's this result in is trade-offs that engineering QA leaders don't want to face. Some studies here from recent studies from different organizations: 58% productivity loss due to having to maintain and automate test. Some of that is coming from developers having to do some of the test automation. Velocity lost, testing was the #1 reason for velocity loss, discovered by GitHub in their DevOps survey. And then just over a 25-year lifespan of any software system, testing accounts for 50% of all the costs for that. And so not purely development or even operations or maintaining all the environments, it's testing. So what's the answer here? Here come the robots, right? To save the day. So the AI tools that are being used in testing today, this is from a study that was done by TestRail earlier this year, and I found this particularly surprising that the #1 tool that everyone's using is ChatGPT. Now, it's clearly a non-specific tool. It's not even a coding specific tool. And people are, popping in questions around generating code or test cases from like tickets from Jira. So a lot of this is something that people are sort of experimenting with here. I think everyone's playing a little bit with ChatGPT there, and then way down to 14%, you start to see GitHub Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, but right in between those two, we're right there, Applitools, 12%. And part of that is because the type of AI that we've developed over the years, so different features for AI that you'll see in testing tools today. Obviously, you've got some coding assistants like Copilot. You've got test case generators that'll take your requirements from your Jira ticket, create new test cases based off of that so that you can then create automated scripts from that. You have test code generators that are basically like recorders that then generate test code on the back end. Things like our own tool, TestGen AI for Cypress, does this, for example. Playwright does this to some extent with one of their recorders. And then natural language testing, this is sort of a newer thing, and this is something that we do in our autonomous product, where you're writing out test steps in plain English, and the recorder that we have in the application actually writes those out in plain English as well. They're easy to edit in plain English, but then the AI executes the test steps in plain English. It's not executing code on the back end. It's actually interpreting what the test steps are that are written out and then executing that through the test run. Test agents are a newer thing where you're either installing something on the application itself, like an agent on the application where it's monitoring user flows and then running sort of those user flows automatically, or it may be using your analytics data that already exists to be able to do that and then continuously try to run those. And then our sort of claim to fame that we've been developing for over 11 years is our visual AI. So when we talk to our banking and financial customers, they're a little bit scared of some of the newer Gen AI specific applications. So the ones that they trust, you can see visual AI down there at the bottom, totally fine with that. It's an older technology. It's based off of machine learning, deep neural networks. It's not intrusive. Testing agents are sort of not being applied in most of our customer accounts, mostly because it's not yet trusted. So they rely on Gen AI to actually be able to create those. And you'll see all of the ones that are above that are human involved, basically AI assisted or AI augmented. So having a developer or a tester be able to sort of babysit the co-pilots, you're seeing a lot of that now. We had a stat from IDC that something like 40% of developers who are using Copilot now feel like they're babysitting more than actually being productive with it. So, senior devs are going to see a lot more of that. Junior devs may be using it more and relying on it, but using it for test cases, if you've got your developers actually building code with your co-pilots, you don't want to rely completely on AI to develop those scripts. You need a human to be involved and monitor those things right now. Now, how's visual AI different than traditional testing? Well, I'm going to show you a pretty simple example of what that would look like if I've got sort of a simple login screen. You'll see we've got a few different elements here. You've got forms with placeholders. You've got some icons. You've got a sign-in button, checkbox here. You've got some social buttons down here, and then sort of this pop-up that'll show you, hey, here's the instructions on it. Now, let's say we push a new version of this, and we're going to make some changes. And it creates, clearly there are some bugs that are happening here. You're going to see there's, we changed the placeholder text. We added some additional terms and conditions down here. But there's also some bugs that you can see, missing image, missing overlapping text here. So with a traditional testing tool, something that's either a record and playback or scripted, what you're going to see is it's going to catch those two placeholders if you've written out the assertions based off of the initial baseline here. So it'll catch those, correctly identify them. Hey, these are bugs, right? Okay, what did it miss? So it missed this, the missing image here. It's going to miss the overlapping text there, which is a visual bug that you really can't catch with a scripted tool. This is a new feature that was added, so it's going to miss that. You're going to have to add this to your test scripts. And locators for this could break as well. So these two social icons that you have down here, because the new feature was added there, it's possible that depending on how the locator was done, it would actually break those and it wouldn't be able to find them. So it may produce a false positive on those. Now with visual AI, it would correctly find that there are 3 changes here, placeholders right there. These are intended changes, though. The new feature that's there, these are simple up and down, thumbs up, thumbs down on accepting this so that it creates this new baseline off of those elements there. And then it would also catch our visual bugs here. So it would catch the overlapping text, it would catch the missing image. And then you've got the 2 icons where I mentioned the locators could be broken there. A visual AI would then compare both the DOM on the back end with the image that we're seeing and recognize that this isn't actually a bug. Those are totally fine, right? So what's that look like in the code? The difference between your traditional validations that you're writing in code, you've got all of these validations that are written for every field, every button, everything that's there. And then when you replace that with visual AI assertions, it's 3 lines of code instead, opening up eyes, checking the image, and then closing it out. So significantly reduces the amount of code that you're going to be using. And this is just purely, I should mention, for our visual AI product. So integrating in with tools like Selenium, Cypress, Playwright, it'll reduce the amount of code that you're seeing there just by using a visual AI check instead of having to validate everything that's on page there. So you might ask, isn't that just visual testing? No. So there's a few different types of visual testing here. You've got your pixel comparison tools that basically just take snapshots of the page. You've got your DOM diffing tools, which will compare the code from one to the next and look for changes between the DOM. And then visual AI, which is what our products are doing. So I'm not going to go too much into the pixel or DOM diffing here, but basically what visual AI is a AI automated visual testing that combines the learning algorithm to interpret the relationships between the rendered page and the intended display of visual elements with actual visual elements and locations. And the benefits over the pixel matching and the DOM diffing would be that you're taking these as you run your functional tests. It's part of the scripts to do that, sure. But it's also able to use the algorithm instead of just relying on pixels to determine when some errors have occurred, which significantly reduces false positives. So if you're doing a strict comparison of one screenshot to the next screenshot, differences between one browser version or another could cause shifts on the page. Any sort of dynamic elements like page shifts or anything like that can cause issues on page. And a whole bunch of other different use cases where it's going to miss. Cross-browser rendering, ad content, search content, account dashboards. All of these things are going to have some level of dynamic data so that when you're comparing 2 screenshots to one another, they're going to produce false positives because obviously it's going to flag things. And you can pause the page so that it loads the complete page with some of these tools, But even that, you're not going to take into account all of the dynamic elements that will pop up. And our visual AI is been developed for a while now, 11 years, based off of 4 billion application images, with a fairly complex algorithm on the back end that we've been working out for a while, based off of all the corner cases that have popped up with customers over the years. So I won't exactly explain what's going on here. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into it. So just visual AI then? No. We use several different types of AI within the products. Visual AI is one of them, and our primary way that we are scaling what we call autonomous testing. So others might rely on those testing agents to do this, or they may rely purely on Gen AI and recording test scripts to do that. We're leveraging the visual AI that we've developed for 11 years on being able to validate those pages, validate things from a functional, visual, and accessibility testing angle, just purely by scanning a page or scanning particular regions of the page and setting different match algorithms based off of the content that's in those regions. And then we've got, sort of the automated test maintenance. So it employs these deep neural networks to find the same differences between browsers, devices, so that if you validate a change on one screenshot from one browser, it'll find the same change across multiple browsers, devices, and even some pages that share those elements, to be able to update all of those baselines for the next test run without having to go through every single one and saying that, yes, this is correct on this browser and this browser and this browser and this browser. If something's different, it's still going to flag those. Then, self-healing elements. This is sort of what I was showing with those social icons on the example there. It can find exactly what's going on in the UI, and when the locator is changed in the actual code, it won't fail the test for that, and it's able to sort of self-heal without you needing to go and check those things. Automated test generation, so being able to generate data for fields like email addresses, names, phone numbers. It'll be able to figure those out and create content or create test data for that you can maintain, or you can upload your own. Obviously, with financial apps, you're going to have very specific needs around account numbers and other types of data that may be not non-standard. So you can sort of teach it what you want it to generate there. Automatic test suite generation. So employing some of the new Gen AI stuff, basically what we're showing there is being able to generate it for the entire website or multi-page application, leveraging some of our visual AI to assist with the Gen AI, so it's not just left on its own. And then authoring those tests in plain English. It's able to, you can write out all your test steps based off of what you want it to do, clicking on a button on the page, naming that button, and it will interpret that, and you can see the test steps written out there and edit them directly. So these are using some LLMs on the back end, some private LLMs, so it's not sharing these with like OpenAI or any of the other vendors there, so you don't have to worry about security issues with that. And we have a lot of data on what we actually do for security. So if you're interested, you can let us know and we can send you something on how we actually do that. Now for the part you were banking on. Applitools AI testing use cases for financial testing teams. So the way some of our customers are using this, obviously, mobile and online banking customer experience is sort of the #1 use case, especially with visual AI, being able to make sure that the applications are showing the correct content across all the browsers, all of the devices that customers are going to be using. And brand validation across subsidiary banks is also kind of a huge thing with most of these most banking applications that where you've got smaller bank branches that have their own websites. You want to make sure that they're using your latest branding and make sure that they're complying with sort of your corporate standards. Public website visual validation. This is one where we're able to use our autonomous tool to actually scan your public facing website and use the sitemap to generate tests for all of those pages that are publicly facing. And then sort of the whole bank experience monitoring. So we can set up smaller tests that'll run on your production application if you'd like, or kick it off with CI/CD to be able to monitor changes that are coming through directly for that. So things on the back end where you have to authenticate and come in and test several of the pages that you would be using most commonly within the application, and then cover all of the rest with a simple visual scan of those pages. And then PDF validation. This comes up a lot, but Visual AI from Applitools is able to look at those PDFs, validate specific elements on them. You can name specific regions and say, hey, this is a text region. I want to make sure that this shows up as text. I want to make sure that this shows up as an image here and that the layout is correct. It's not overflowing into an additional page or anything like that. So very, very useful for things that traditional test automation wouldn't be able to cover there. So one case study I want to talk through a little bit is one of the top 5 US banks testing an online banking application. Before they started using Applitools, they were using open source tools, manual testing. Took a ton of time from developers to actually script all of those tests. Lots and lots of manual testing would slow things down, especially when there were big changes, and then they would miss a lot of things, because as good as manual testers are at being able to catch changes and know what things are supposed to look like in the application, there's always differences that you're going to miss. Things like, hey, there's a broken locator on those social icons, or there's something that is not quite the right color that's missing for brand compliance. We can check those things. There's a lot of smaller changes that the visual AI is able to detect at the pixel level, and then based off of the algorithms that you like to validate on the page, they were able to actually catch more bugs while also reducing some of the false positives that they were generating with their traditional test automation. So some of the results here, they're automatically detecting 35% more UI defects weekly and reduce their effort to code and maintain test. What does that look like with the actual numbers? Well, they increased their test coverage for 5x the number of browsers and devices that they were able to test. The production bugs that they caught repaired early in the cycle, they were getting more than 5 bugs a release than they were getting before. So release cycles for this were fairly quick as well. So less than a week for a lot of these. Manual testing efforts, they saved 555 hours for each release obviously across multiple manual testers, reducing the effort that they actually had to do, because they could go in and validate the screenshots that would show up in Applitools and look for the differences between the two, and be able to give the thumbs up or thumbs down as to whether or not those changes are intended. Efforts saved to create and maintain visual UI tests. That's part of the coding and self-healing capabilities that we have in eyes. 444 hours per release. So a combination of those two, 999 hours, just slightly under 1,000. And then ROI delivered 344% per year. So fairly good return on their investment with the product, and better customer experience, which is not included in this ROI calculation. So additional value created there as well. Now, how do you get those kinds of results? Well, the way that we've sort of built this out with our customers and worked with them to create a best practice for this, AI-driven testing. Now, what does that actually mean? One, we want to attain complete test coverage going from below 20% to 80% or more. So a lot of times you'll hear risk-based testing or value-based testing where you're prioritizing the most important pages, the most important flows through the application, and you should still do that, but there's a bunch of other pages, bunch of other parts of the code that you'll be missing just by focusing on those. So it doesn't cover everything that you need it to, and customers are still going to find those and still have that experience. And when their money is on the screen, it's got to be right. It's got to be correct. Otherwise, they're gonna change to another bank that does have it correct. We want to also lower the skill set required. So less coding required to maintain these automated scripts, less coding required to be able to pinpoint root cause analysis, be able to feed good information back to the developers. So not just saying, hey, here's a bug, but being able to say, hey, here's the bug that's showing up on the screen. Here's where the code is showing the bug in the DOM. That's the issue we need to go fix. So makes the amount of time that you've got much quicker. And we want to reduce the human intervention required. So from total involvement in the review of the findings and filling coverage gaps, obviously with the 20 to 80%, even up to 99% with some applications, we really want to start to minimize that number as much as we can. So that's what we're working towards. But we're at a point right now where I was showing earlier with the different types of AI features that are in testing tools where you can't 100% hand over everything to the AI right now. So what we recommend doing, and what some of our financial customers have been implementing, is to do about 20% AI assisted testing and then 80% autonomous testing. So following the 80-20 rule of what's most valuable, what's most important, 20% we're going to cover those with custom flow tests. So these are kind of like your traditional functional tests, but it's all AI assisted. It's got additional things that are in there, like being able to do the visual AI assertions, creating these test steps in natural language rather than having to code them, working interactively with the browser that generates those test steps in natural language. You still are able to do all the things like parameterize variables and even check API calls within that and test all those across browsers and devices. So that's your most important flows through the application. This is that 20% that you've been prioritizing with your traditional test automation in the first place. And then the other 80% we can cover with visual AI full page test, either from a list of URLs that you provide or from a website scan if you've got a sitemap for it, where it can go and take snapshots of all of those pages and use the algorithms within the visual AI to compare both the screenshots across browsers and devices along with the DOM on the page to find real bugs like a human AI would be able to do, and even better in a lot of cases. So let me jump into some of the actual features and show a little bit of some demo videos of how this works. So interactive test authoring in plain English, I'll show what that looks like here. You can see on the right, we've got a browser that's being recorded, and on the left, it's generating those test steps in plain English as we're clicking on things here. And then you can add in UI validations as you go through. Everything here, you're recording these test steps interactively. You can edit them interactively. You can debug right there on screen. I'll show this next one has a few different things that are added in there as well. I mean, the really interesting part about this, the thing that that I'd like to point out is you've got all of these little variables that are popping up here, and you're able to go through and actually change those so that you can parameterize things or use test data to sort of randomize what's going on. And you're not testing sort of the exact same user set every single time. And really important, not a visual AI thing, but actually validating textual assertions here. So verify that the text in the name field is capitalized, for example, or follows a specific pattern, starts with the letters XYZ for an account number, for example. All of those things could be shown, could be verified very simply with these text assertions within the tool. And you can see here, we're just changing that to a variable there. So it'll use name from a list of test data that we have, or you can generate it yourself and create the parameters within those, so that next form fill, it can randomly assign those. It can also, it's not shown in this one, but it can also execute some JavaScript code before you run it. So an example that we've seen is sort of a dynamic map on one of our banking customers' apps, where they're clicking on different branches and things will pop up within the app. And that's not going to show up when you just click on the screen here. It doesn't record those. It's very difficult to code that. But running a little JavaScript right before to get those to pop up will allow the visual AI to check each one of those as it goes through. So you can do some fairly complex stuff here, but while still keeping it simple, natural language driven. And let me see, we may actually have the one that shows what those variables are. Yeah, this one's good. Okay, it's the same thing. Sorry about that. Okay, let me skip those. LLM assisted test authoring. So one of the interesting things that you'll see here is if you make a mistake, the AI can correct you automatically. It'll make a little change. Oh, I misspelled click as clack. And it automatically goes through there, and you'll see that the test steps have been fixed. If it makes a mistake, you can teach it, hey, that's actually the way I wanted to spell that. A lot of times, brand names or something that would be unique that might not be in your dictionary for the LLM, you can teach it that as well. And then just going through and simplifying test steps. So if you write too many, if you try to write a test step or a list of test steps in one single one, it'll break it out into multiple as you're going through it. And then I want to show you a little thing that we're really excited about doing. It's intent-based testing. So you can get it to do something like fill out the form as a Disney cartoon character. And you'll see, oh, it generated Mickey Mouse and Mickey Mouse at Disney.com right there within the form field without you having to do much of anything. So it's automatically running those tests now. So you can be fairly vague with your test steps, and it'll create something that will be very useful for you. The API testing part of this is pretty exciting for people who are a little bit frustrated with Postman right now. They have a big pricing increase that happened recently. So this is a little bit simplistic, but it covers what you need to, where you can do your HTTP calls from it, and then verify your response headers, your response body, the cookies. All of those things will be able to show up right there. You'll get the JSON output from it. And let me grab this next one. And then you can verify that again with the variable name that shows up right there. Now, this is one of our other types of tests where it's actually, you're going to upload a URL list. And one of the important things to do there, you'll see we actually are running a custom flow to do authentication before the URL list is run. So basically the flow goes through, logs in, and dismisses like the cookie banner, for example. You want to get rid of that. Maybe you want to change the language within the application. And when it runs those URL tests, it's going to do the full page scan. And I'll show that in just a minute here, what that actually looks like when you're evaluating the test results from it. But also want to point out, we do full website test as well. So if you're entering a URL, you can pick your environments that you want to scan it on. It'll create baselines for all of the screens that it finds. You can also enter in subdirectory URLs. So if you want to test a smaller part of your site, if you just wanted to test, like customer focused pages, or if you want to test partner focused pages, something like that on the application, it'll allow you to do that, and it'll just grab those pages from the sitemap that meet that fall within that subdirectory, which makes it really, really easy for you to get increased test coverage for the application. And then the visual assertions, this is sort of where the visual AI actually does its magic. So either URL test, you can see I've got a banking app here that we're testing out. It's got some account numbers. It'll pop up any little visual difference. So some pages will have a lot of differences in them, especially if there's dynamic content, but you can change the matching algorithms so that it ignores some of those things and only catches the real content that's there, which is, pretty easy to maintain. And then the test plans, you can schedule those to run nightly, pick out your test environments. You can add additional tests to that, so you can actually run multiple ones from it. And I will just show you real quick here make sure this is showing it. The dynamic regions that we've got for the specific types of text here. So things like numbers, where you've got currency or account numbers, you can see there, if you change, if I change the region, I'll get to where that's at on this one. Yes, you can see that's a dynamic region, and you have options like ignore the colors, ignore the layout. But specifically with numbers and text fields, we're able to change what type of validation is being done there. So this one's using a currency pattern, but you could change it to date, number, link, email, text field, or you can add some custom regex to match specific patterns like account numbers, for example. If it starts with a certain combination or ends in a certain combination, or it falls within the same pattern, credit card numbers typically have that sort of structure to them. And those are things that you no longer have to code. The visual AI is able to test those, validate them, identify that this is an account number that matches a specific pattern, and you don't have to worry about that. One less thing to code, one less thing to worry about, and it'll also self-heal, self-maintain itself, automatically catch anything that doesn't match those patterns, obviously. But usually the issue, if you're using visual testing, or is that it'll generate false positives for those, because the numbers will actually change. So they'll either ignore the number completely, or they'll find a difference and flag it as a difference, but it's not really a difference. It's just dynamic data that's on the page. And if you're doing it with coded assertions, obviously it takes a long time to write those out. And then when they break, when the locators change, you're going to have to go and maintain those. Well, solves all those issues. Yep. And just a quick overview of what autonomous is, quick recap here. So easy one-click setup, that's for the URL test, for the website test. You're able to create those entire test suites. When you're doing it with the website scan, it'll actually detect new pages, find any missing pages, faulty pages. If you've got 404s or anything like that, it'll catch those. The no-code test authoring that's interactive with the browser, that's something that's fairly unique about the tool. especially with the recorder being able to generate the test steps in plain English, the LLM assisted test authoring with grammar corrections, syntax, step disambiguation, splitting out those test steps, and the new exciting thing, intent-based testing, where you give it a general intent that you want it to do, and it'll be able to create test steps that match that. And then different types of testing you can cover with this: cross-device and browser testing, visual testing with our visual AI, which does some functional testing as well as visual testing, and then the functional data testing. So things that you're recording with those custom flows where you're testing your most important flows to the application, able to parameterize those variables, generate the test data, and then API testing. So you can replace some of your API tools with this, and you can run it as all part of the same test suite for a full AI-driven end-to-end testing plan. So that's it for the presentation here. I'd like to now open it up for Q&A.
Yes, thank you, Tim. And there's some QR codes there that link to the resources we talked about earlier, the papers. So if you'd like to ask a question, there's a button bottom center. It says Q&A on it. Please just write your question, and we'll come to you. But I'm going to kick off. Tim, thank you for the presentation. You covered a lot of ground.
Sure.
I was really interested in actually that slide about the origin, the development over those 11 years of your AI platform, your algorithms. What sort of questions do you get about that from your financial services customers? What kind of depth of disclosure do you find they need about the models that you've developed?
Yes, great question. So we often get sort of general security AI questionnaires now. I think in the past couple of years, it's sort of been standard for a lot of products with any AI technology built into them, which is most SaaS products these days, not just testing products. So with our visual AI in particular, we're able to point out that it's built on machine learning, deep neural networks, technology that's been around for a while. It's not hooked up to any of these OpenAI or Google APIs for the Gen AI part of it. So you don't have to worry about your data being fed into them for training data. It's much easier to satisfy the security concerns of your InfoSec team whenever you're showing a technology like this. It's also just much more reliable. They're getting better. The Gen AI models are definitely well, release to release, they may get worse for a couple of days, but so they're mostly getting better. But they still do hallucinate at times. They still do make mistakes. So that's part of why our best practices here are using the AI assistants for your most important parts of your application, your most important user flows, and then 80% is able to cover all of the rest that you're doing there. And if you're doing that with your existing testing framework, you can still code all those and then use Applitools eyes for the visual AI part of it to increase coverage and reduce the amount of code.
Okay, well, we do have a couple of questions, and the first one actually relates. You mentioned data. Where is the test data stored? Sorry,
yes.
the supplement to that is, and does the Applitools platform provide options to keep sensitive data secure during testing, or what security measures do you have built into the platform for managing data? I guess is the more general way of putting it.
Sure. So you can upload your test data directly to Applitools, and it can be stored there. We've got some information about how that's actually stored that we can share a security questionnaire answers for those types of things. Obviously, for security purposes, I won't go into the details right now as to exactly the way that's done, but it is not stored up on a public cloud or anything like that. You can have your own private instance of it, so private cloud and deployments of it. definitely available, so you don't have to worry about your information being outside of your own network. And the like passwords and other data that's stored there. I believe we store it with a base 64 encoding first, and then most of it is encrypted after that. And I don't have all the details, but again, we can provide those during a POV of the application to any security team.
Yeah. And so related to that, I mean, it's available on private cloud. What about, I mean, you can host on your own infrastructure, presumably, and provide this as a SaaS service. Yeah.
So you can with Applitools Eyes. Autonomous is it's a platform that we've got private cloud and public cloud options of it. So those it has to be sort of a web-based thing that is on one of those options. Your own infrastructure is not an option for that one.
Okay. Question. I'm just reading this out.
Sure.
Is the testing of native apps supported in the same way as browser-based apps?
So it is for Applitools Eyes. We use basically Appium or Espresso, one of the other testing frameworks for native apps, where you would be able to add in the visual AI assertions within the code for that. The native mobile apps, other than that, we have multiple integrations with Device Labs and a partner integration with Kobaton for their Device Lab as well. So you can test those on real devices as well as emulators or simulators. With Autonomous right now, it's able to test mobile web apps, not native mobile apps, but will be soon within the next few months.
Okay. And again, a related question to the answers that you've already given, but can Applitools work within different development environments behind different firewalls at different customers?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I can provide a little bit of details as how you can do that. With Autonomous, it's fairly simple. It's either you're installing you're creating a tunnel agent on a machine that's got access to the application behind the firewall. As long as the machine is available and has access to it, the Autonomous will be able to use the tunnel to test that application. And similar stuff with since you can run Eyes through your own infrastructure, you'll be able to do that there without having to worry about the firewall.
Okay, good. That's it. Thank you.
Sure.
I think we've run out of time, Tim. And for those of you who joined the webinar a little late, or who would like to watch it in its entirety again, it will be on our website very shortly once we've done a little edit, www.qafinancial.com. And if you're watching the recording, then you've already found it. But Tim, thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you Applitools for supporting this webinar. Really interesting topic, and I thought your demos in particular, your little videos there were particularly interesting. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah. Thanks, Matthew. Thanks everyone for attending.